My father turned me into a servant so my stepsister wouldn't lift a finger. They left me alone on Christmas while they took her on a cruise. But when years later he demanded $50K for her college debts, my answer left them speechless. I'm 28 years old. I work as a graphic designer at a mid-sized agency, and like 3 weeks ago, my father called me asking for money to pay my stepsister's college debts. And when I told him no, he hung up on me. It's not the first time he's asked me for something related to her. And honestly, every time my phone rings and I see his name, I get this knot in my stomach. Because I know he's not calling to ask how I am or if I need anything. He never does. I guess I should start from the beginning, so you understand why every time I hear his voice, I feel this weird mix of anger and sadness that I don't even know how to explain anymore. My mom died when I was 9 years old. It was cancer, one of those that moves fast, and I remember that in less than a year, we went from her being fine to her being gone. I'm not going to go into details because even now, almost 20 years later, it's hard for me to talk about it without my throat closing up. What I do remember perfectly is how everything changed after. My dad, Robert, was like 35 at the time, and he basically fell apart. He didn't sleep. He stopped cooking. The house was a disaster, and I was a kid who was also devastated, but trying not to be too much of a bother because he already seemed on the edge of collapse. My Aunt Margaret, my mom's sister, came over often to help us. She'd bring food, clean a bit, take me to her house on weekends. And honestly, I don't know what we would have done without her during that first year. About a year and a half after my mom died, my dad started dating Linda. I don't remember exactly when I met her. I think it was at a barbecue at his friend's house. But I do remember she was much younger than him, like 12 years younger, and that she had a 17-year-old daughter named Ashley. At first, Linda was super nice to me. You know, she'd bring me little gifts, ask about school, that kind of stuff that I now see as obvious signs of someone trying to look good. But I was 10 years old and desperately needed some female attention in my life, so I completely fell for it. My dad seemed happier too. He smiled more, and I thought maybe things were going to be okay again, that we were going to be a normal family. Linda and Ashley moved into our house when I was 11, maybe 12, and that's when everything really started to change. Ashley was like 17 or 18. She was in her last year of high school, and from day one it was clear she wasn't going to do absolutely anything around the house. Like, nothing at all. My dad told me that now that we were a bigger family, everyone had to help out, and he gave me a list of chores that included washing dishes, cleaning the kitchen, vacuuming the living room and bedrooms, cleaning the bathrooms, taking out the trash, basically everything. When I asked him what Ashley was going to do, he said she was busy with school and getting ready for college. I was also in school, obviously. I was 11 or 12 years old. But that apparently didn't matter. Things got worse over time. And when I say worse, I mean I basically became the house servant. Ashley didn't lift a finger. She spent the day in her room or going out with her friends, and if she left dirty dishes in the living room or threw her clothes in the bathroom, guess who had to pick them up? If I complained, Linda told me I was being dramatic, that everyone in a family has to do their part. But I was the only one doing anything, while Ashley literally did nothing except exist. My dad never defended me, not once. When I tried to talk to him, he'd tell me that Linda knew what she was doing, that she had experience raising Ashley and I should listen to her. And I'd just stand there thinking, really? This is the experience? Raising a girl who doesn't even know how to make her own bed at 18? The worst part, and this still makes me incredibly angry when I think about it, was Christmas that first year they lived with us. I would have been like 12 years old. Turns out Linda wanted to take my dad and Ashley on a Caribbean cruise during winter break, like 10 days or something. And when I found out, I obviously assumed I was going too. But no, Linda said the cruise was very expensive, and there was only enough for 3 people, and that besides, someone had to stay home to take care of Buddy, Ashley's dog, a golden retriever she'd had since he was a puppy but never really took care of. My dad told me like it was the most normal thing in the world. Hey, honey, you're going to stay home this vacation to take care of Buddy? Your Aunt Margaret is going to come see you every day to make sure you're okay. And I was in shock. Like, are you telling me I'm going to be home alone during Christmas while the 3 of you go on vacation? Seriously? And yes, that's exactly what happened. They left around December 20th and came back after New Year's, and I stayed alone in that house taking care of Ashley's dog, which wasn't even my responsibility. My Aunt Margaret came every day, brought me food, stayed for a while, but she had to go back to her house because my cousin Chris, who was like 14 at the time, also needed her attention. I spent Christmas with them, which was nice, but then I had to go back to an empty house where the only thing keeping me company was a dog that wasn't even mine. I remember sitting on the living room floor watching TV with Buddy lying next to me and thinking, my mom would never have let this happen. She never would have left me alone like this. And I think that was the moment when I really started to understand that my dad had chosen Linda and Ashley over me, that I was secondary in my own family. The following years were basically more of the same, but worse. They kept giving me more and more responsibilities, and by the time I was 14, I was basically running the entire house. I cooked dinner most nights because Linda said she was tired from work, even though I also went to school and did all the house chores. Ashley by then was already in college, or at least she was supposed to be, because she lived at home and I saw her more time lying on the couch watching Netflix than doing anything else. She never paid rent, never helped with anything, and when her laundry needed washing or her room needed cleaning, guess who did it? My Aunt Margaret kept visiting me, and my cousin Chris came over often too, and they were literally the only good thing in my life at that time. Chris was 2 years older than me and was like the brother I never had. He listened when I needed to vent, and although at first he didn't say much, I knew he could see that something wasn't right. When I was 14, I confronted my dad directly. We were in the kitchen, he was having coffee before leaving for work, and I told him, I need to talk to you about Ashley and the house chores. It's not fair that I do everything and she does nothing. My dad didn't even look up from his cup. He just sighed and said, life's not fair. You just have to deal with it. That's how things are. And that was it. That was his answer. There was no conversation, no attempt to understand me, just a throwaway comment before walking out the door. I stood there thinking, is this my dad? The same one who used to take me to the park and taught me how to ride a bike? The one who read me stories before bed when my mom was sick? What happened to him? It was Chris who finally opened my eyes when I was 16. We were in his room playing video games, and I was telling him about my week, about how I'd had to clean up the mess Ashley left after a party she threw while my parents weren't home, and he paused the game, looked at me and said, you know, that's not normal, right? Like, nothing that's happening in your house is normal. They're treating you like a servant, not like a daughter. And I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. But he kept talking. Seriously, cousin, my mom and I have talked about this. What they're doing to you is wrong, and you need to start planning how to get out of there. And that stayed with me, that conversation, because until that moment, I had normalized everything so much that I didn't even realize how bad things were. So, I started planning my escape, basically. I focused on school like never before, got the best grades, joined all the clubs and extracurricular activities I could, did community service, everything I thought might help me get a scholarship for college. My Aunt Margaret helped me with applications, took me to visit universities on weekends, and my dad didn't even ask what I was doing or where I was going. Linda didn't either. Honestly, I think they were happy that I was out of the house more because that way they didn't have to pretend they cared. And it worked. I got a full scholarship to a university like 4 hours away. Everything paid for, dorm included. And when I got the acceptance letter, I literally cried with relief. My Aunt Margaret hugged me and told me, you did it, honey. You're going to be okay. And I believed her. I left for college right after turning 18, and honestly, it was like being able to breathe for the first time in years. Nobody was telling me what to clean, what to cook, what to do. I could focus on my studies, on making friends, on discovering who I was outside of being the girl who did everything at home. I called my dad a couple of times the first few months, mostly because I felt like I should. But the conversations were awkward and short. He'd ask how my classes were going, and I'd say, fine. And that was it. Linda never bothered to call, and neither did Ashley, which seemed perfect to me because I had no interest in talking to them either. Everything was relatively quiet until I was in my second year of college. I would have been like 19 or 20. One day, I got a message from Ashley, and I almost fell over in surprise because she had never contacted me on her own initiative. The message said something like, hi, I know we haven't talked much, but I need a favor. I have several important essays to turn in and I'm super stressed with everything. Could you write them for me? I'd pay you, obviously. And I just stared at that message thinking, seriously? Is she asking me to cheat for her after years of treating me like garbage? I replied, No, that this was academic fraud and I wasn't going to risk my scholarship for her. And she sent me like 3 more messages trying to convince me, saying it wasn't a big deal, that lots of people did it, that she'd pay me well. I just stopped responding. Like 2 days later, Linda called me, and she was furious. She started yelling at me on the phone saying I was selfish, that Ashley just needed a little help and I couldn't even do that for my sister, that after everything they'd done for me, I owed them that. And I was in the library when she called, so I went outside and told her, "After everything you did for me? What exactly did you do for me? Leave me alone at Christmas? Treat me like a servant for years?" And she hung up on me. My dad called me that night, and I was hoping that maybe, just maybe, he would understand. But no. He told me he was disappointed in me, that family helps each other, and that I was being immature and selfish. I told him I wasn't going to cheat for Ashley, and that was that. And he hung up on me too. I didn't hear from them for several months after that, and honestly, it was a relief. But then, when I was in my 3rd year, my dad sent me a message asking if we could meet for coffee when I went home during break. I actually hadn't planned to go home. I usually stayed with my Aunt Margaret when I had breaks, but he insisted so much that I finally agreed. We met at a coffee shop near the university, and he showed up with Linda, which should have already alerted me that something weird was going on. They sat across from me, ordered their coffees, and after like 5 minutes of awkward conversation about the weather and my classes, my dad finally dropped the truth. They needed money. Turns out Ashley had decided to study, I don't know what, something related to art or design or something like that, at a super expensive private university, and obviously she hadn't gotten scholarships because her grades were terrible. My dad and Linda had paid for the first 2 years by taking out loans and using their savings, but they couldn't keep doing it, and Ashley still had 2 more years to go. They told me that since I had gotten a full scholarship, clearly I didn't need money, so if I could help financially with Ashley's college, even if it was just a few $100s a month, it would help them a lot. And I sat there thinking, are they asking me for money to pay for Ashley's college? The same Ashley who never lifted a finger around the house, who made my life impossible, who treated me like I didn't exist unless she needed something from me. I told them no, that I had my own expenses, that even though my tuition was paid, I still needed money for books, food, transportation, and that I wasn't going to give them a single cent for Ashley. Linda started with her speech about how I was selfish, that family supports each other, and I exploded. I told her that she never treated me like family, that they treated me like a servant for years, that they left me alone at Christmas to go on vacation with Ashley, that they never cared about me or how I felt. My dad tried to interrupt me, saying I was exaggerating, and I told him, no, I wasn't exaggerating, that he chose Linda and Ashley over me from the moment they moved in, and that I didn't owe them anything anymore. I stood up, grabbed my things, and left, and I didn't look back even though Linda was yelling that I was ungrateful. I didn't hear from them again for almost a year, and honestly, I thought they'd finally gotten the message. But then, like a month ago, my dad called me again. This time he told me that Ashley had dropped out of college, that she had huge student loan debts, and that they needed my help paying them. He wasn't asking this time. He was basically demanding it, saying that as her sister, I had a moral responsibility to help her, that she was going through a difficult time and I was the only one who could help. I asked him where that moral responsibility was when I was 12 and they left me alone at Christmas, where it was when they treated me like a servant, where it was when I needed emotional support after losing my mom. He had no answer for that. He just kept insisting that I should help because it was the right thing to do. I told him no, that I was never going to give money to Ashley or to them, and to please stop calling me. He hung up, and that was the last time we spoke. It's been like 3 weeks since that call, and I haven't heard anything more from them. Part of me feels guilty, because he's my dad at the end of the day. But the truth is, I feel more relief than anything else. I already graduated a few months ago, got an amazing job at a design agency where they value me, and where I'm finally earning my own money, and I'm building a life that's completely mine. I see my Aunt Margaret and Chris all the time. They're my real family, the ones who were there when nobody else was. And I guess that's enough, right? I don't need my dad's approval. I don't need Linda to accept me, and I definitely don't need to have any kind of relationship with Ashley. Sometimes I wonder what my mom would have said about all this, if she would be proud of me for setting boundaries or if she would think I should be more understanding. But honestly, I think she would understand me. I think she never would have let things get to this point. And maybe that's what hurts the most, Not so much what my dad and Linda did to me, but the fact that he let it happen, that he chose an easier life with a new wife instead of protecting the daughter he already had. But it's done, it's over, and I'm here, I'm okay, and that has to be enough for now.